trackers. Is it okay to track your children? Nowadays, of course, it's commonplace for parents to use an app on a smartphone or a GPS tag to keep in touch, keep tabs on where their children are. You can plot them on the map as they make their way home from school or while they're out playing, and maybe that gives you peace of mind while you're letting your child take their first steps into independence. Lots of parents continue to track their children as they grow up so they can keep tabs on their teens at university or on their way home from a night out. But are we raising a generation which has always been monitored and surrounded by a digital parental safety net? And is that really the best thing for them? An organisation called Generation Focus has brought together psychologists and health professionals to raise this issue in a letter to the Times. It says parents need to consider the consequences of constant surveillance and warn it's creating a more anxious, less resilient generation of young people. They say there is no evidence that tracking makes our children safer. Perhaps you decided not to track your children and to let them be out there in the world making mistakes and learning from them without the ever-present parental safety net. Or maybe you think tracking your children is essential for their safety and your peace of mind. Email your comment, tell us what you think, and your number to vine@bbc.co.uk or text 88291. Charlotte Ashton is the co-founder of Generation Focus and joins me now. Charlotte, good to have you with us. Tracking our kids then has become the norm. They go to secondary school, that might be the point where they get a smartphone and parents use it to keep tabs on them. You have a child in year 7, that's first year at secondary school. Do you track them?
I don't. And there have been moments when she stepped out to walk to school by herself where I thought, am I mad not doing this? Why would I not have that peace of mind that she's arrived safely at school? But the reason we haven't done that is that there are increasing calls from psychologists, from psychiatrists, from health professionals, that there could be unintended consequences to tracking our children on their mental health and on their development, because it prevents them having a true sense of autonomy, and it prevents their brains learning that they can go out into the world in a safe setting. I'm not talking about letting them go off and do crazy things, but that they can go about routine journeys to school, trips to the park nearby, a walk to the shops, and that they can do that safely by themselves without us. And that gives them a sense of confidence. It builds their resilience and makes them less anxious. So what the health professionals that we've spoken to are saying is, let's just pause, let's have a conversation, let's think through some of the unintended consequences and not sort of sleepwalk into another kind of unhealthy social norm that could impact our children negatively in the way that, say, social media and smartphones have.
And on this point, Charlotte, about being tracked, making them more anxious and less resilient, is that all about, them not trusting themselves and relying on their own instincts, problem solving? Exactly,
yeah. It's depriving them of the opportunity to see that, okay, I can walk to the shop and come back and be fine by myself. And that gives them a sense of confidence. Now, the thing that confuses me is if they do get into difficulty, say they walk to the shop and something goes wrong or someone follows them, what they need in that moment is real life kind of streetwise skills. And there's a risk that by handing them a smartphone or a tracker and saying, don't worry, I've got eyes on you, you're good, displaces those real life skills, which is actually in the moment what they need to keep them safe.
Yeah.
So it's very unlikely that a child will get into trouble. But if they do, they need to know, okay, I need to get myself to a place of safety. I need to have the confidence to stop an adult and ask for help. Who I always say to my girls, like, look for another mum or dad, like look for someone with kids, look for someone in uniform, go and ask them for help. That ultimately is what's going to keep them safe when they're out and about. But from a psychological point of view, they need to know that they can do these things by themselves, to feel confident, to build up resilience. And it's like when trying to diet with chocolate biscuits in the cupboard. Your brain knows they're there, and if the brain knows that mum and dad are there, you're never really getting that opportunity to be truly independent and autonomous and resilient.
Let me bring in Lisa Francesca-Nand, who is a journalist and a mum who tracks her 13-year-old son on his smartphone. Hi, Lisa.
Hello, good afternoon.
And do you think that makes him and both him and you anxious?
No, to me, it gives me a reduced sense of anxiety. I mean, let me just say that I am a child of the 80s, and I realise how markedly different our childhood was, where we were out, for hours exploring on bikes and, sort of climbing through windows on abandoned houses and up trees and everything.
Not that bit.
No, exactly. No, the trees and we were just exploring quite, adventurously, should I say. So yes. I do know it's a marked difference. But childhood actually is different these days. And I'm not saying it's more dangerous. I don't think it is more dangerous, apart from more traffic than there was by then. But, childhood has moved on and technology has moved on. And I think it's just something that is there if they've got a phone with them anyway. If they don't have a phone, then obviously it's a different thing. But kids are actually already used to sharing location data with apps and social media. Family tracking is a thing now, and it wasn't then. And to me, it does. I never go out and find him anywhere, but it does give me that sort of sense of comfort that I can do if I want to. And I do look at it, to make sure he's where he is, if that makes sense.
And how does he feel about being tracked?
He doesn't really notice it, actually. I think it's just normal, like it's normal to have a phone in your back pocket. It's normal to have, a calculator on you all the time. He's never really noticed it. It's not a thing. It just is what it is. And actually, he can't see my location, which I'm fine with him doing, seeing my location back. It's just I haven't set it up. But in his dad's house with his dad's partner, the three of them see their location at all times. And I think that is a reality for many families. In fact, people I know without kids, they know where their husband is and their wife knows where they are. And it's just one of those things that you can go, oh, you're almost home. I might go and meet you, or might put the kettle on, or, it's just one of a natural thing of living these days. And does it restrict their freedom and their skills? I don't think so. A lot of things restrict our freedom and skills, but they are part of life, as well. It's just part of daily life.
Yeah, I think tracking your partner is a whole other discussion. But coming back to Charlotte, I mean, some really valid points made there.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think the thing we need to do is step back and say, just because we can do something doesn't necessarily mean that we should. And this is why I think at this juncture we need to stop and listen to what the psychologists are saying. There's another element to this, which Lisa sort of alluded to, which is that the perception that tracking apps make children safer does drive and support the norm of children having smartphones. And we know there is overwhelming evidence that the younger a child gets a personal device, the worse their mental health will be. So it does open the door often to children having devices that expose them to considerable harms. I mean, the biggest threat facing our children today comes from online. There is also the point just to say, and something that does concern me, is the traffic thing. If we're giving our children particularly smartphones in order to track them, there is a risk when they're out and about that they're distracted, they're looking down, they're not looking up, and they're more likely to step into moving traffic, they're more likely to be mugged. So we just need to think about some of these unintended consequences. And whilst I agree, like for adults, like that's fine, knock yourselves out. As adults, we can do what we want. But for our children, they're at a different stage developmentally. They have different psychological requirements. And we just need to listen to the experts, because for the first time ever, those needs are being obstructed by technology. This is new, and we mustn't just sleepwalk into adopting technologies that may have unintended consequences for our children.
Although it doesn't have to be a smartphone, does it? It could be an AirTag, for example, that does the tracking. And there's even a shoe brand now that has a place in the sole of the shoe where you can insert a tracker, an AirTag.
Yeah, I mean, the products will keep coming. And that's the other thing we need to bear in mind here, is that at the heart of all of this is a financial transaction. And the marketing material that we are bombarded with taps into our deepest fears. It really does. Peace of mind, keeping your children safe. Like, we all want to keep our children safe. We all feel sick at the thought of anything happening to them. But we just need to take a step back and think, who is this actually benefiting? Is it benefiting us and our children, or is it benefiting the pockets of the technology companies? So that's something else I think we should be really cautious about here, particularly as more and more products, like the trainers you talked about and all the different GPS devices flood the market.
I wonder, just finally, Lisa, has Charlotte's, the case that she puts forward for not tracking your children, has it made you reconsider?
No, I mean, I agree with everything she says and I see everything she says, but I'm still going to do it. The technology's there, and I just think it's a little bit like insurance, isn't it? You know, it's a sales thing. We probably don't all need insurance, but when something goes wrong, it's really nice to know it's there. And if my kid was sort of off for several hours and I didn't know where he was and he was meant to be at home, I'd be panicking a little bit, and I could, you know, maybe check in and see, oh, he's still in the park and he's okay. Obviously, it doesn't stop things from going wrong, but it means you can act on them. And I think, you know, it's that awful sense of fear that we don't want to have, and we don't want to live in fear, but it's nice reassurance if you have that, you know, ability as a backup, you know, if on the off chance something does go wrong.
OK, good to talk to you both. Lisa Francesca Nand, journalist and mum who does track her 13-year-old son on a smartphone, and Charlotte Ashton, co-founder of Generation Focus, that says we should pause and think about whether or not it's in our child's best interest to track them. I'd love your point of view. 88291.
Come on, get on up. We're wild and we can't.